Daniel, good morning. Thank you for joining. I am excited to have you on the show. The reason we're coming together is that I recently came across a book that you have written and published, and I thought it had a lot of practical benefits and lessons for our running community. And I reached out. I was hoping you would say yes. I know you're very busy right now with the book tour and the publishing, but fortunately, we were able to get a few minutes. And thank you for coming on and chatting with us.
Well, thank you, George. It's great to be here. It's great to talk to your audience. I love runners because a lot of runners have a great mindset. You have to push through obstacles. You have to overcome things. You have to get up and push yourself on days you don't want to. So I think your audience relates very well to my book, The Asset Mindset, or Special Forces Mindset.
Great. Well, maybe to start, can you just tell me a little bit more about yourself? What do you do for kind of live, work, and play? And how did you get from where you were to the point where you're releasing this book?
Well, I was a blue collar guy, grew up, doing sports, baseball, football. I did run. Then next thing you know, I'm growing up, having to do things in life, get a job, working in the family business. I go to college, get my bachelor's degree. I get my real estate license to work and buy and sell houses with the construction business. And 9/11 happened, which we just had an anniversary of. And I talked about that to some of my other podcasters and interviews. But 9/11 changed everything for me and not just the world. So I had to do something to help protect the country. I wanted to support the troops. And I figured the best way to be there, to support them, was to be there with them. And that's when I did my research. I decided to join the military, and I went Special Forces, and I was able to make it through my mindset and my hard work and dedication and discipline like runners have. That's why I think we have a lot in common. And I was able to become a Green Beret, and I went to 7th Special Forces Group and deployed to Afghanistan.
Wow. That's such an amazing story. My first question is, I grew up in a military family. Both my parents were in the Air Force. My dad was in for 30 years. My mom was in for 20 years. And so I grew up on Air Force bases all around the country. They did some overseas work before I was born. And it's just a different mentality, I think, going into the military and the sacrifices that you have to do. What was there anyone in your background that was in the military? What even put that onto you in the radar screen in the first place? Was it really just you saw September 11th and you said, what could I go do after that?
Well, my grandfather did serve 32 months in combat in World War II. He didn't talk a lot about it, but I saw the pictures on the wall growing up, and I always knew he was in the military. My father almost went to Vietnam, but he got married to my mother, and his lottery number never came up. So he stayed home to be with the family and whatnot. But I've always had respect for the military. I grew up watching Rambo.
Yeah.
At the time, I didn't know he was a Green Beret, but I idolized him when I was in Boy Scouts and going on camping trips. But yeah, it's just one of those things. After 9/11, I've always been pretty patriotic. And before I served in the military, into like giving back and paying it forward in life, I worked at an orphanage in the Dominican Republic. So I moved down there and helped build it with an organization called Orphanage Outreach. So that was in 2000. After graduating college, I get back, I'm working, and then 9/11 happened. And I saw people deploy that were married and had children. And at that time, I wasn't married and I didn't have any kids. And I felt like if anybody should be going, it should probably be me before them. So I enlisted.
Yeah. And when you went into the Army, what made you decide to go the Special Forces path?
Well, if you're going to war, you probably want to be with the best people around you. So that was one kind of selfish motivation, but at the same time, I love the mission of the Green Berets. So Green Berets do unconventional warfare, and they work with the local populace, or local nationals, as we call them, which, like I briefly mentioned, I went to the Dominican Republic, stayed down there, and worked with locals and helping build an orphanage. So I already kind of had that, I would say, experience. Obviously it wasn't at war, but working with the local people and realizing how you can make a difference, that's what made me want to be a Green Beret more than to just go to Ranger Battalion or become a Navy SEAL. God bless them both. They're amazing individuals, but I just love the unconventional warfare aspect of the Green Berets.
Yeah. Did you have to was Spanish your language specialty because you already had experience in the Dominican Republic?
I lucked out with that. But yes, as far as 7th Special Forces Group, our AO or area of operations is Central and South America and Spanish speaking. So that was definitely beneficial because I came off the streets to be a Green Beret.
Yeah.
So I didn't have all the military experience. So I was blessed with becoming an engineer where I had construction experience, and the language I got, Spanish, I had some Spanish experience. So I could focus more on my military schooling.
Yeah. This is kind of related, but my sister, she's been a missionary for the last almost 20 years, and her area of operation is actually also in South America and Central America. And we grew up in Georgia, and we didn't speak any languages at all. We were as gringo as you can go be. But one of the things that is so important in their work, and I think also in the Green Berets as well, is being able to speak the local language and the customs and being able to go out there, interact with the community. Because from what I know about the Green Berets, you're not in for a week, you're in for months at a time because you're really trying to do these long-term operations with the community and, building things, insurgencies, etc. And so being able to actually develop the local customs is so important. And she has seen that in her work as a missionary.
Absolutely. When you can relate human being to human being, and you're on the same side and you're trying to make the world a better place, or you're trying to help feed kids, or you're trying to help protect families or a village, that resonates a lot. You're not just landing, or jumping in and doing a raid and getting out.
Yeah.
Like when you're there and you drive through that village on a regular basis, when you're working with the people, you're having meals with them, that changes the game.
Yeah. So you go from that experience, and then now you have written a book. How did that happen? Were you a writer? How did you get up the courage to say, you know what, I need to actually put some thoughts down on a page?
Well, it was a lot of messaging and little hints from God and the people around me. And I just like serving. And I eventually realized that the pen is mightier than the sword. When I was in the military, that was all sword, or, going, kicking indoors, breaching doors, and going getting the bad guy. But the biggest catalyst for me with writing this book is in Special Forces, we have a motto called De Oppressor Liber, which is to free from oppression or free the oppressed. I think people all around the world, all different ages, oppress themselves with their own mindset or their own thinking. We beat ourselves up more than anything else. So I've tried to take that Special Forces motto that we used on our missions and what we were trying to do in the world to bring that now to people so they can have that motto and do that for themselves and realize they are their own greatest asset. They are more powerful than they realize. If you can stop that victim mentality or that oppressive thinking, it's game changing. And I'm sure your runners know that. If you're on a run and you start thinking negatively, or, oh, I have so far to go, it's just the weight of that can really bog you down. But if you're running and you look and, man, it's a beautiful day, look at the blue sky, or look at those clouds, or, oh, did you see that bird? And your mind isn't focused on that negative, next thing you know, you're a mile or two down the road. And that mindset or the thinking really is game changing.
Yeah. I love that. And I think that was one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about the book, is that one of the most common questions that we get from the runners listening to this is, what do you do when you deal with negative thoughts? You've had a bad race, you're in the middle of a bad race, your training isn't going well, you get injured, whatever it happens to go be. And I think as runners, we're often looking for tools and frameworks and plans to follow, but we don't always have this mental plan. And so that's what I think is really interesting about what you talk about in the asset mindset, is that as you go through the book, really what you're giving is ideas and tips and strategies for how to deal with different situations, and being able to pull upon those when you overcome something and figure out how to go do. And so what I would love to do is, maybe could you kind of talk about, just in general, what are the overall themes of the book and how is it organized? And when someone finishes reading it, what do you want them to take away?
Ooh, bunch of great questions there. I'll do my best to get them all covered for you. So the overall theme of the book is you are your greatest asset. But I also break that down into 3 key points. So number 1 is you need to understand you have to take ownership of your life and you're your greatest asset. Nobody can help you more than you. If you want to be healthier, you have to eat healthier. You have to exercise. If you want to live somewhere, you have to pick up and move. If you want to be in Hawaii, nobody's going to move you there for you. You got to do it. So the second point, though, is you need to surround yourself with other positive assets. So people or environments or teams. You need to be with people that are going to lift you up and not drag you down. And then the third point is those people that you're with or you're around, you need to be an asset for them, or the paying it forward story that we all hear, like, hey, pay it forward. The more you pay it forward or the more you give, the more you shall receive. And I 100% believe that. If you do those 3 things, you will change your life immensely. And the other key point that I want people to realize with the asset mindset, I know on the cover it says a special forces perspective for achieving success. Well, you don't have to be special forces to have this asset mindset. However, if you want to go special forces, you do need to have an asset mindset because you are going to be challenged. There's going to be obstacles. There's going to be struggles. You're going to be tired. You're going to be cold. You're going to be hungry. And having the proper mindset will get you through all those things. Just like someone who's running and hits the wall and then keeps going, you can break through the wall.
Yeah, well said. I think that came across very clear when I read the book, is that you tell a lot of stories from your time in special forces, but also your time after special forces and just your life in general growing up. There's great stories about relationships with your dad, some of the professional work you did after the military. And what I think you do in the book is that you say, hey, here are some skills and tactics that I learned while I was in special forces that helped me develop this mindset. And there's a couple of them that I really wanted to ask you about because I think they are really relatable to our running community. So the first one is you have this section where you talk about the importance of kind of backward planning, where you say, hey, look, if you want to move to Hawaii, or if you want to run this particular marathon, for instance, starting with that goal, and then you use this process of backward planning to get there. I'd love to have you talk more about what that process looks like and how that might be useful to someone.
Okay, so backwards planning is going from your end goal. So if you want to run a marathon, we'll use the running analogy because we're talking about running and your audience is runners. If you want to run a marathon, you don't just go out and run 26 miles that next day to be like, oh, I'm going to run a marathon. You have to backwards plan. Okay, I have 6 months to prepare. So how many times am I going to run a week? How many miles do I want to go? So if I'm going to run a marathon in 6 months, maybe I want to do a half marathon the week before to see where I'm at. Maybe you want to run, 3 miles one day, and then you want to do a long run, 10 miles, a couple days later. You plan for your own success and your own goals, and you know yourself better than anyone else. But if you wanted to start from 0 to get to 26 miles, maybe the first month you're doing 3 to 5 mile runs. The next month you're doing, 5 to 10. Then you're doing 10 to 15. Then you're doing 15 to 20, so that by the time you get to that 6 month point, you're able to do the full 26 miles.
Yeah, it's such a simple idea, but I feel like most people hardly ever think of it like that, right? And it's like, hey, if I want to be here in a year, that's hard to think about. But if you say, well, if I break that into what I need to do today to get me closer to that in a year, it's a lot easier to kind of work on. And I don't know, I think it's a really good framework for people to think about.
Absolutely. I agree. That's why I put it in the book.
There's another really cool story that you have in here that I think is really relatable to runners, but people in general, where I'll just read the passage because I thought it was so good and I underlined when I read it. But you're talking about this is in the 11th chapter where you're talking about let's see. This is about opportunity and creating success. And so you say, even if you are only able to make it an inch closer to your goal on any given day, it is still closer than you were when you woke up. Focusing on the past or doing a mile of talking won't get you any closer to your goals compared to that inch of effort and groundwork you can make. And I love that phrase, that idea of an inch of effort, which seems so small, but on some days that's all you can go do, and you're giving us permission to do that versus nothing. What inspired you to write that particular concept?
Well, you mentioned my dad earlier, and a lot of that comes from my dad, because he said, as long as you do a little something, it doesn't matter what it is or how much it is, but as long as you are further ahead, whether it be that 1 inch you've improved or moved closer to your goal, then that's a positive day. Yeah, maybe you wanted to go 10 feet, but you know what? You still move forward. And I use this to help people understand that, yeah, we're going to have some days we don't accomplish as much. Myself, I like to think I have the asset mindset. I wrote the book about it, but I don't get everything done every single day I want to, but I can lay my head on the pillow at night and be like, you know what? I did this interview, or I built this, or I wrote this, or I responded to someone that I needed to respond to. As long as you're doing something closer to get to your goal, then have peace in that.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, I love that particular phrase in the book. So everybody should pick up this book and give it a read. And after they read it, if they're looking to start implementing the asset mindset, is there any particular set that you would say, hey, start here, do this particular thing first? What would you recommend to people to say, hey, this is the first thing you should do to kind of start changing your way of thinking?
I think having an AAR.
Got it.
So that's the after actions review. So at the day, figure out what you did well in the day, and then have a course of action for the next day. Even if it's just write down 3 things on a sticky tab, put it next to your end table, or write down 3 things that you want and put it on your fridge or whatever it is. But take 3 things that you want to do. They don't have to be big things. I want to read for 10 minutes. I want to get an extra run in, or whatever it is. But you will start to see positive things happening, and it makes you feel good when you can check something off a list. Yeah. And if you can do that, then you can make the list bigger. All right, I'm going to make it 5 things. And you can start being long-term goals or short-term goals. But the key is to just, like you said, that inch. Just start moving forward, and it's incredible when you start building momentum. It just makes you want to do more.
I love it. What's next for you? What's sort of the plan? Are you gonna? What's your plan? What's your vision for the book? Where would you like it to go? Is there something else that you want to write after this one? What are you thinking?
Well, I'd love the book to make New York Times bestseller. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. It's doing pretty well right now, and I'm grateful. But all the help, people, you can share it and get the word out. I mean, I'd love to be chicken soup for the soul type deal. Awesome. Or the power of now with Eckhart Tolle, because I do believe the asset mindset will help everybody. It's not just for younger generations. It's not for successful older people. It's for anyone, because we can all use this. It's all encompassing in life. And that's where I would like to go with the book. I also do some speaking for corporations and people that want to improve their business, because they've found I've had a lot of salespeople have actually gravitated to this book, and managers, and they're using it and handing it out, and they're actually seeing results. Yeah. So I've started doing some speaking and coaching engagements as well. But I do have plans for another book out there. It's not done yet, but it's going to be about struggles and the asset mindset. The struggle is real, because we're all people and we're all going to struggle. Yeah.
I have no question it's going to be incredibly successful. I mean, I just, the audience that we have, we typically talk to runners that have just done races, that have done different events. And your particular book, just like you're talking about, I think it has elements that appeal to all the different people, whether you be in sales and business, whether you be in medicine, doesn't matter, right? Or if you're a runner. And so I want to encourage all of our readers, all of our listeners, to check out this book. I will put a link in it into the podcast. But Daniel, where can listeners find out more about where to buy the book? If they want to follow you, where would you recommend that they go to follow along on your journey?
Instagram is a great spot, The Asset Mindset, and also the assetmindset.com. So my book title.com, and there you can contact me. You can, see some pictures from when I've spoken or spoke at different events. You can get the book. There's a click now button, which will take you to Simon & Schuster's page where you can go on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, BAM, Books A Million. It's out there everywhere. So, and if you read it, please give me some feedback. Give me a review, because I tell you what, you out there, the readers, is what's really fueling me to make it even grow bigger and bigger. Because when you start changing people's lives, it's incredible. And it's definitely, like I said earlier, the pen is mightier than the sword.
Well said. Anything that I didn't ask that I should have asked that you wanted to talk about or touch upon?
No, I think we've had a great time. It's been great talking to you, George. I think what you're doing is great. I love what runners do. The motivation, the discipline, things I talk about in my book. I mean, I think this is a perfect match. And thanks for having me. And it's been great getting to know you.
Absolutely. The Asset Mindset. Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.